My name is Greg Leger. I live in Dartmouth, but I'm from New Brunswick. I brought in an icon of St. Joseph and the Christ Child that belonged to my grandfather that he found in Flanders in 1918.
Towards the end of 1918, with the Central Powers of Europe beginning to collapse, and Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany facing an impending revolution, British Allied forces made great advances across the Western Front. As soldiers retook the towns and villages in France and Belgium, they also began to pick up the pieces left in the conflict's wake. War trophies emerged from beneath the ruins and mud, but not all were remnants of the battlefield. Personal mementos and charms of good luck and safekeeping were commonly discovered, separated from their original owners, whether simply by accident or, in many instances, by death. Soldiers returned home with keepsakes of one another, each souvenir carrying an unknown side of a tragic story shared between all who served.
Well, we're here with Greg Leger. I'd like to welcome you to Militaria. And for anyone at home, Greg is my first cousin. So I was wondering, Greg, if you could tell us about the artifact you brought in today.
Well, Kev, as you know, this is an icon, I guess, of St. Joseph and the Christ Child that our grandfather, James Gillespie, found in Flanders in the mud in 1918. I guess it must have been in the fall of 1918. And the story my mother tells me is that he was in Flanders in the war, and he was standing in the mud, and he felt something under his boot. He reached down, picked it out of the mud, cleaned it off, and of course, as a good Roman Catholic, recognized it immediately, I suppose, as St. Joseph and the Christ Child. And of course, with the metal frame shaped as a church, it's obviously an object of veneration. My understanding of the picture is that man is holding the Christ Child on his lap, and together they're holding a long stem flower. That flower is supposed to be representative of the biblical King David and the prophecy that the Messiah for the Jewish people would be from the Holy House of David. With him sitting on his father's knee with that flower in their hand represents that he is fulfilling that prophecy.
He ends up, as you remember, serving with the 4th Field Company for the 4th Canadian Division.
As a
sapper.
So that's because he knew about wiring and
exactly.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that's when he gets appendicitis and he almost dies. After like 6 or 7 months of recuperating, because this appendix burst. So he almost died of poisoning. He would just be getting back on his feet and feeling better, and because he's still in the active service, he was sent overseas.
Was he in hospital up in Quebec? Or?
I think no. He literally, that appendix attack happened in Parsbro, and he was taken on the train from Parsbro to Spring Hill. And the singer Anne Murray's grandfather was the closest surgeon. So old Doc Murray, he took his appendix out, and no one expected him to live.
Really?
Oh yeah, I remember hearing those stories about how Jerry and his brother Morris, they put him on a stretcher in the mail car on the train, and half the town, they all knew he was home for leave. They all came down to see him, and no one ever expected to see him again.
Wow.
Right? And his brothers were allowed to go with him in the mail car.
They didn't have antibiotics
nothing.
or nothing. They didn't have nothing.
So you just have to, take that out, and he would have had a drain in him taking out all that poison. And again, just getting your strength back, just back on your feet. And again, he's sent overseas because he's still in the army, right?
Yeah.
The sapper is literally, in its most basic form, is someone who digs sap trenches, okay? Some sappers are tunnelers, so they do all the military engineering. It also includes bombing and demolition work. So our grandfather was trained in using satchel demolition charges and things like that. So he had, at the last part of it, he had a pretty grim experience overseas. Again, when he found this, it's it's been
Must
shared.
have been like a talisman.
Again, he had a feeling that whatever was going to happen, he was going to be all right, because he had found this. This was like a sign to him.
Yeah. Yeah, divine intervention. Some people don't believe in that anymore.
Oh, no. The
Well,
other
you
one
know.
too is that he remember telling me is like the famous rosary that came
Yeah.
from Ireland that
Yeah.
that belonged to his mother, belonged to his mother's grandfather.
Now, have you got that?
I've got that
Yeah.
rosary, yeah. But they used to believe in the trenches, if you were a Catholic, if you were saying the rosary when you were under bombardment, when you're being shelled, that he told me one time it was that whenever he was shelled, he would say the rosary. And so, you know,
Take
be
your
like
mind
this
off things.
Yeah, and they had this belief that, or he shared this one with me, is that if you were killed by a shell while you had words of grace upon your lips, you were going to go right to heaven.
Right on. Hey,
And
people
again,
believe that's
They
true.
really, really
Yeah.
did believe those
Yeah.
things. And so again, like that faith and that sort of theology, that got him through the war. Our grandfather meant the world to us. He's a great role model. And again, his is one of hundreds of thousands of stories of the Canadian Expeditionary Force and those that served and those that survived the war. So again, he had a huge impact on our lives. We are, in many ways, both of us especially, almost like our grandfather's sons. We're you know, I remember our mothers both saying that, how much we're both like him. So with that, yeah, this is, with everything we've been doing here, this is a real nice piece. And of course, we could talk about our grandfather. We'd have a whole program
Oh,
just
yeah.
about Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, though, it's great that you were able to come in and share this story with us and with everyone.
Well,
thanks so much
for
for
inviting
coming.
me, Kevin.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
It was a pleasure to be here and a really interesting experience to get, you know, TV land.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So what I'll do with that icon now is take it back home, put it in the living room where I can see it. If I found that thing in the ground, kind of bent and broken and dirty and covered with mud, and I was, you know, at the front of Flanders in 1918, I think it would mean quite a bit to me. I think he must have felt that that was I wouldn't call it a lucky charm, but don't forget he was Irish. And they do have a lot of superstition. But, you know, for me, I'm not that religious, but I would preserve something like that, wouldn't you?